how do you think we could solve an issue like this?
Well, I think you're right in identifying the source of the problem. Again, it's not the AI itself, it's how it's used.
Today, I had the honor of interviewing Congressman Sam Liccardo, who represents California's 16th Congressional District. He is brand new to Congress, was just sworn in to the 119th Congress in January of 2025. But before that, he was the mayor of San Jose. He led major progress in climate action, housing, public safety, and economic growth, making the city a national leader in carbon neutrality, cutting homelessness, and attracting major tech investments. I reached out to Representative Liccardo's team because I really wanted to talk to somebody in Congress about AI and about some of the concerns that a lot of us have regarding AI, but somebody who also understands the possibilities and the potential for this technology to make our lives better. Now, full disclosure, there was a little technical glitch at the end of the interview, so we don't have the best closing because there was some interference with his microphone and it just didn't work. So I'm going to share with you some of the most important questions that we did get to that were at the beginning of the interview. So that was great. And then hopefully on another occasion, he and I can have another conversation with a follow-up. How do you see AI actually helping us in our daily lives? Like in terms of lowering bills or improving healthcare, all of that. How do you see AI actually helping people?
Well, I think AI can help in a lot of ways, but it may not always be visible. For example, we're all worried about utility bills, and they're skyrocketing in lots of parts of this country. And there's a lot of ways in which AI can be used to be able to manage power to ensure that we're not using as much when it's really expensive, which is typically in the evenings between roughly 6 and 9 p.m., and using more during the daytime when we've got lots of solar, for example, in places like California. And being able to shift loads in that way can actually save us all a lot of money. And being able to do that in real time is difficult, and AI can really help. That's not very interesting or sexy, but it matters if I'm paying my utility bill. It matters a heck of a lot. It may help me also be able to find, for example, that ideal place I really want to rent at a better price, et cetera. So there's lots of ways in which AI can help. Now, I think we've all know that there are lots of ways in which AI is used that worry all of us. I mentioned rent, for example. I think it's pretty well chronicled about how landlords may be using AI, for example, to set rents higher than they might, et cetera. So, look, this is like any other tool. The question is, how are we going to use it?
Yeah.
And like lots of tools, we need good rules and we need to use good judgment. And unfortunately, that's been in short supply in this place where I occupy here in Congress.
Okay, like you set it up perfectly for my next question. And the first thing you talked about was energy bills.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to talk about energy because AI does use a lot of compute power, and that means more energy use.
Yeah.
So I know that whenever we discuss AI, a lot of people are rightly concerned with how we are powering the data centers for AI. And I would love to know what you think about ways that we can make sure that AI can grow without making climate change worse.
Yeah, I know that there are a lot of folks who are very focused on this issue, who are a lot smarter than me, who are trying to figure out how we can use a combination of energy storage and renewables to dramatically scale up the amount of energy we need to satisfy the need that we know is coming. I would say, look, AI can actually be helpful in this. For example, battery storage technology is really, really important if we're going to save this planet. And it just so happens that AI can be used to help with discovery of new materials and combinations of those materials to be able to help accelerate development and research in that space. That's going to be really important. And there's a lot of folks in my neck of the woods in Silicon Valley that are working on that very issue. They're also working on issues like how we can actually improve the efficiency of AI and make that compute less costly, less expensive. And there are more than a few companies working hard on that challenge. And I think there's good reason to believe that we're going to see greater and greater efficiency over time. That doesn't necessarily mean we know that overall utilization won't be just as high, because sometimes it means folks just use more of something if we're more efficient at it. But at the very least, we should be able to get our arms around this problem in a way that where technology can actually help. Now, what we do know also is, gas infrastructure takes a long time to build out, particularly in green fields. And so there's a real disadvantage to doing things the old way. Drill, baby, drill sounds nice, but it turns out to be both very expensive and actually takes a lot of time. And so although this administration certainly is leaning in every way it can on drilling and so forth, I'd like to believe that the market forces are going to prevail here to push us in a direction toward where our better angels would direct us, that is, toward renewables and storage.
Thank you for that. And then I have like so many other questions to ask you,
That's
but
cool.
I want to go into something that worries a lot of people, which is that AI is going to take away jobs.
Yeah.
And what can we do to make sure that workers are trained for the new kinds of jobs that AI is actually going to create?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is we need to acknowledge that they're right. AI is going to disrupt our economy in a way that's going to leave a lot of people out of jobs and make it a whole lot more difficult. And we're already seeing that in ways perhaps that are not entirely anticipated. In my neck of the woods in Silicon Valley, where I know folks who are in units where they've laid off half their coders, turns out that an awful lot of that can be done more efficiently with the help of AI. They still need, interestingly enough, the senior folks who understand whether or not the models are working and they're getting the code they need and want. But it's creating a real challenge for entry-level folks in software development, where previously somebody could get a great job right out of college. All of a sudden, we've got a lot of college graduates struggling mightily, and a lot of brilliant college graduates, I might add. So if you're out there, please don't feel bad. This is a tough time for lots of folks. Look, we know that there are going to be new jobs will be created. It's true with every technology, and this is the path that we've seen, since the Industrial Revolution. Luddites might throw the printing press into the water, or I guess it was a loom. I don't know what it is they threw in the water, but anyway, we know more jobs get created. That is the reality of the economy that we've seen. The challenge is we have a huge mismatch between a lot of those jobs and the skills we think people may need. And the truth is, we don't even know what all those jobs are. One thing is certain is that government will be the last to know what those jobs are. Usually those jobs are discovered by those employers who are out there looking to hire, who've figured out that actually we need a lot of people to do these things. That's where I think we need much better collaboration between the private sector and public sector. Something we experimented with when I was mayor of San Jose, for example, when Alaska Airlines wanted to expand the number of routes at their airport, they said, hey, we would love to be able to expand routes, but we don't have enough mechanics. We need engine mechanics. These are jobs that pay like more than $100,000 a year. The great jobs for folks that don't need a 4-year degree, but we need someone to train them. We can't find. So we reached out and looked at different community colleges and state universities where they could invest in actually expanding an engine mechanic program to help provide not just their need, but also other airlines that want to expand. And it all worked out. And Alaska actually invested a lot of money in that program. Well, one thing that Obama pushed in the last year of his presidency, which didn't get any traction, unfortunately, because he was lame duck by this point, was the idea of providing tax credits for companies that want to invest in community colleges and state universities to start to develop those critical programs. Because even more important than the money they invest is the knowledge that they provide to our community colleges and state universities about what the skills are that they will hire for, right? These are the positions we really need. They're not going to be traditional positions. And Lord knows government's not going to understand where they are and how to train. So we really need the private sector to provide that information in a very clear way so that community colleges and other critical institutions in our cities can respond.
I was a software engineer that got hired right out of college.
Sorry.
Well, that was many, 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 many years ago. It's fine.
Yeah.
You talked about the partnership, the importance of partnering the government with those in charge of innovation. And that usually also comes with the word regulation. And many people think that that means slowing down progress. But I think it was in your innovation agenda that you talk about smart regulation, right?
Yeah.
So what does smart regulation mean? And how do we keep people safe from fraud and privacy violations, but still let companies and small companies and startups innovate?
Yeah. Well, I'd say there are a few basic principles we can apply. One is that we shouldn't be treating all the innovators like they're oligarchs. And we've had some problems with that, including, in my own party. In terms of the application of, for example, antitrust rules in ways, we know that, Amazon may be doing some things that require greater scrutiny and maybe even an enforcement action. But when one molecule companies can't even get acquired by any any pharmaceutical or other company to be able to get the funding they need to be able to get the clinical trials, which is what they absolutely have to get to in order to be able to provide what may be a very necessary cure for an important disease. Those are the challenges. And we saw a lot of that over the last several years in the antitrust context, where the lack of very clearly defined rules that seem to sort of paint everybody with the same broad brush is problematic. Along the same lines is, people want to know what the rules are in advance. And again, a common complaint I heard in the Valley was, hey, we don't want to see regulation by litigation. In other words, the first time we hear that the SEC or FTC or Justice doesn't like what we're doing shouldn't be when they file a lawsuit. We should be able to read about it in a rule. Someone should clearly articulate so we actually know what the rules are before we make very important and expensive business decisions. And so it's very important us to be very clear about it. And I think also along with that clarity comes with the notion that, look, all these companies are dealing in a multinational environment, and having individual states come up with their own sets of rules, and they have to somehow navigate this thicket of 50 different sets of regulations is monumentally challenging and is going to set us way behind when we're competing against, for example, China, which may not have any rules at all, but at least if they do have rules, there's one central government dictating the path.
Hmm.
We've got to create a clear, consistent set of rules so everybody knows exactly what the standards are. So some of those kinds of principles are going to be very important for everyone. And then in terms of helping the smaller companies compete and so forth, there's been a lot of talk, particularly in AI, about very extensive testing requirements and other requirements that typically only the big labs can really engage in any way that's affordable or that they can afford, I should say. And so we need to make sure that whatever requirements we're putting on utilization, whether it's AI or any other technology, are rules that are appropriately scaled.
Okay, I'm gonna pick your brain on something that was announced recently. So the
Yeah.
Friday before Labor Day, news came out that apparently the Trump administration is considering a pilot program in 6 states where they're hiring a private company to use AI tools to approve or deny Medicare procedures in those 6 states. And the problem that I've seen highlighted over and over and over in all of the articles that I've read about this is that the companies that own the AI technology in charge of this, their incentive or their payment structure depends on how much money they save in these procedures. So they are incentivized basically to reject as many procedures as possible, even if the doctor recommends them. Now, I reported on this and then it started gaining traction. I believe Stacey Abrams or somebody from her world reported on this. So more people are going to learn about this and people are
It's New
freaking
York
out.
Times. Yeah, absolutely.
And it is scary to think that there are AI tools or algorithms that are incentivized to give people less health care because then the companies behind them are making more money. So like, what do you think about this, but like, how do you think we could solve an issue like this?
Well, I think you're right in identifying the source of the problem. Again, it's not the AI itself, it's how it's used. When you've got a contract that creates an incentive for companies to make money by denying care or denying coverage, obviously they're going to design algorithms that are in their financial best interest. That's to everybody else's detriment, and particularly for low-income communities. And I know in our Latino community where we have much lower rates of challenging those adverse determinations, that means people are really left outside. And so the problem is how AI is used, because I guarantee you there are already private insurers that are using it in different ways. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't use it or can't use it. For example, when you have a clearly identified set of very low value procedures that may not be very recommended by, a panel of sensible doctors. AI may be sensibly, applied in a way to enable you to get through those decisions faster, make everything more efficient. It really does come back to this first point. It's how we use it, and we need rules on how we use it that are very clear and really are focused on the outcomes. And the outcomes we want to avoid are obviously um, excessive denials.
Okay. How people use it. A lot of us are also worried about deepfakes, scams,
Yeah.
personal data being misused by AI. I fell for an AI video that was shared and reshared on Instagram, and I was like, oh, this is lovely. And then somebody was like, oh, this is AI. So I had to
Yeah.
unshare it because it really bothered me that they didn't disclose that it's AI.
Yes.
If I had known, I'm like, oh, okay, it's a good idea, but it's AI, it's fake. But the fact that I didn't know that this wasn't real really bugged me.
There's even more when you're the one that's pictured, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I agree with you. How can Congress protect people from
Yeah.
these things? Or how can we support members of Congress like yourself that are trying to set smart regulation around these tools so that it's not inappropriately used, etc.? Like, what
Right.
can you all do? And how can we support people like you to get this done?
Yeah. I mean, one tool that can be helpful, and the technology is still evolving, but is watermarking, a way for uh, the the LLMs, for example, that are creating generative AI. And you can do the same thing with images, certainly in voice, go to varying degrees, to be able
Like
to label.
requiring a watermark, kind of
Yeah,
like
that's right. Right.
it's required that
Professionally
if you're
label.
going to sell cigarettes, you have to like disclose the thing.
Exactly. So everybody knows, and there's something they can point to. Now, the extent to which these watermarks are indelible is very much the challenge technologically. And again, that is still evolving. But at the very least, we can or should be mandating that the best industry standards are used. And that's actually legislation I'm working on right now, Roke on it. We haven't yet introduced that bill, but we're working hard on it. So again, I think this is where Congress needs to step in. Now, Congress has a real challenge dealing with AI or frankly, anything that's technology related. And we've been waiting for a digital privacy bill for about 30 years. Similarly, despite the fact there seems to be universal agreement that we need to do something about child safety, you know, I've been here for 7 months. I haven't seen any significant child safety legislation moving, which is frustrating to me because I'm starting to just say, okay, maybe I'm going to do it. And we haven't seen any significant upgrades in about 20 years. So this is not an institution where stuff moves very quickly, and we probably need to create mechanisms where Congress can essentially say, look, we're going to establish what liability is by a standard that an expert panel over here is going to determine and update as technology improves. And we'll say that everybody who meets that very high standard that constitutes the best practices of the industry is immune from liability, and everyone is below will, have fun with the lawyers. Yeah, I think we're going to need a very flexible approach like that because Congress is just not good at regulating in this space or, frankly, anything that's technology related. And we need to find ways in which we can leverage expertise. Not a strong suit of this administration, but hopefully it's something we can get done with Republican colleagues over the next few months.